So please join me in welcoming Geoff Boyle, cinematographer, for the next session. Thank you very much.
Hi. I'm going to vary on what I was supposed to be talking about because of what's been said this morning. I was quite interested in a lot of... And also, two of the clips I wanted to show I'm not being allowed to show because producers don't let you show things. So, what was interesting for me is Julian's work this morning, which I loved. I love 5% out into the audience. It's brilliant. But you can only do that with a director who knows what he's doing, knows what he wants, and isn't going to change his mind. Now, hands up, anyone who knows a director like that. You know, they are the most fickle, mind-changing people in the world. So you will not end up on the top of that slope. For safety, you'll end up halfway in the slope, because when they change their mind about cutting from 5% to 5% and cut from 5% to -2%, it's not their fault. It's your fault, because directors are never wrong. It's always the DP or the stereographer that made a mistake. So just cover yourselves. As far as the idea of one-piece cameras developing and being able to shoot documentaries properly, I have been testing and testing this, and I'll show some later. They don't work. They really do not work. I did the launch for Panasonic of the 3D-A1. I've shot tests with the professional version of it. They reduced the IA from 65mm down to 58. Great. When you shoot a documentary, what are you often doing? You're shooting interviews. And I tend to shoot interviews, I've done them for years on film and so on. You get close to a person, you show them in relationship to their background. Well, not a chance with a 58mm IA. And I did actually write, and the report I wrote for Sky said in the morning I was testing it, I had been listening to a remix of Jefferson Airplane, Volunteers. And there's a line in it that says, "Up against the wall, mother." And that's actually the only way you can shoot an interview with that camera, up against a wall. Because if you've got any distance behind it, you'll hurt people. The TD300, I'll get into that later. It's better, but it's still not wonderful. So, back in 2007, I was asked to shoot a 3D movie with Tom Jane. The only reason I was asked to shoot it was I'd done a movie the year before with him, and I had a prototype of the SI2K, and just happened to say in passing, this would be really cool for 3D, the size it is. A year later, I get the phone call, do you want to do the movie? Yeah. And of course, caused chaos because it was all set up what cameras we're going to use, how we're going to shoot it, and I wanted to use smaller cameras. And Max Penner of Paradise was terrific. He worked with the guys at Element Technica to build a small rig. It's now called the Dark Country rig. We could put it in the Steadicam I wanted, the AR rig, so you can go up and down. Because I had a really, I was convinced that to make 3D work, you needed to move. All the 3D I'd seen up to that point was very static. There were very big cameras that weighed 110 pounds. And I wanted to get a camera that weighed more like 15 to 20 pounds, so you could move. Because it seemed to me that being able to move into and round things would be really exploitable in 3D. And a lot of people are saying they lose the use of long lenses when they go 3D, and that's terrible because they can't separate things. Well, you know, that's good lighting. That's good photography. You can easily separate things. Greg Toland had no problems at all on Citizen Kane. You know where you're supposed to be looking. And there was a really interesting thing happened this morning. If you're watching Carmen, and this is not a criticism, it's just a simple fact of stage lighting, but there were a couple of sequences where you weren't, well, I certainly wasn't watching Carmen. I was watching the chorus behind because they were brighter than she was. And my eye went straight to the bright object. And a simple way to deal with where do you look in 3D is you pop whatever you want someone to look at by only a third of a stop. Not enough so you really see it by eye, but on screen, you're there. Now, I'm going to give you a health warning. The material you're going to look at today, the 4 clips I brought with me, I post-produced. They're from original rushes, except in one case. The first clip I'm going to show is from Dark Country. They are converged for a 50-inch screen, so they're going to be big on here. And the first shot in Dark Country I got wrong. It stutters. It's nobody else's fault except mine. I didn't sync them up properly. But you have to bear in mind that Dark Country wasn't shot with any sophisticated recorders. It was 2 MacBook Pros Velcroed onto a wooden plank. And you started recording like this. And sometimes, if I was the one who was hitting the record button, running, I think the record was 370 frames offset. So, you know, it got interesting. The third shot in the Dark Country sequence, you have to try and visualize a Steadicam operator being followed by a cable basher, being followed by a man with a plank on a strap round his neck with 2 MacBook Pros, being followed by Max Penner and myself. I stopped very quickly when I fell over too many times, trying to free view. So you're running, but trying to cross your eyes so you can get stereo out of the 2 MacBook Pro monitors. You cannot run and free view at the same time. It's just not possible. So it's going to hurt. The first section of this is not nice, but I want to show it because these are original rushes. It's not a cut as such, they're just rushes strung together. They're all converged, so the background is offset at 38 pixels. No sophistication in how it's been done, but the grades on them, which I'm really pleased with, are the original grades that I did on set. Using speed grade on set, we were generating looks as we went. This is the original grade. Sony didn't release it like this, they chickened out. But can we run that, please? You may wonder why the music's there and why it's Bernard Herrmann. It's because we had a director and a production designer who were Bernard Herrmann freaks. And in pre-production, Tom and I, the director and star, had been exchanging clips of film noir. The whole thing was to steal film noir. It was The Outer Limits meets film noir. But they decided that as a lot of it was mute, we were going to have, and certainly before shots, we would have this enormous PA in the middle of the desert, blasting out the soundtrack from Psycho, North by Northwest, anything by Bernard Herrmann. I was going crazy by the third week of this. I just couldn't take it. Our working day was night. Everything was night. Dark Country. And I didn't realize how cold American deserts get at night. It was very cold. Early build of Reds. It was build 7 to build 8. Incredibly unreliable. The very second night, I think it was, I told Max that if it didn't work the next day, I was kicking it off a cliff. And I meant it. I wasn't that polite, I was screaming it. So that was my introduction to it. And I was unhappy with the whole experience in all kinds of ways, so I wanted to learn more about 3D. The 3D rig that was built for it, Dark Country, I still don't think has been bettered. It's a very small, very rigid rig that works with SI2Ks, only SI2Ks, only prime lenses. It has so many limitations, you can't believe it. But because it's got all those limitations, it doesn't have a lot of the liabilities that rigs have, in that it doesn't go out of alignment. You can treat it really badly. And the next clip I'm going to run is totally down to me screwing up. This is not off rushes. This is lifted off a Blu-ray and chopped down on a Blu-ray, and I got the frame rates wrong. I thought it was 23.97. It's not, it's 29. And I just want to have a brief, why the hell don't we work at 24? Nice, simple, straightforward. There's a very simple answer, that cheap Americans wanted to be able to use old NTSC kits, so we're forced to use these bizarre rates. Why we have to use these bizarre rates is, we should have just said no. It's a change, digital cinema, we're moving. But of course, that's not what happened. So would you run Mercedes now? And again, it will stutter on pans and moves, but it's... And if you can leave the mics live so I can talk through it as well, please. One pair of Reds on a Stab C in a helicopter, and 2 SIs bolted to the back of our camera car in a side-by-side rig. Our camera car was another SLS, driven by a rally champion who could drive on that circuit faster than David Coulthard could. which was quite interesting. The object was to get over 160 miles an hour car to car, which we did do. It was wonderful working with Jeremy as a producer of Ink, because he basically said to me, what do you need to make it look as if it's going fast? And I said, all the cheats we use in 2D, like long lenses, slow shutter speeds to blur, it won't work. The only way to do it and make it look fast is to go fast. So we did some tests with Jeremy Braben's stabilized tracking system. We got up to 100 miles an hour on that. But then the mirror started to flex in the dark country rig. And so that was the limit of car to car of a mirror rig, and then we switched to the slower ones. I just want to do a brief aside here about how, just a tiny bit about my background. I did maths, advanced maths and physics at A-level in the mid-60s, and then went to art school. My school had a huge Ferranti computer, Valve one, which had been donated to them, took up an entire classroom. So I've known computers for a long time. I had an Apple II before the IIe came out back in the late 70s. I run an internet site, I live on computers, and I loathe the things. I think that they do their best to screw us up. I think that the concept of computers in HAL, of them turning on you, is without doubt true. But I think the problem is that the computers we use nowadays have all seen HAL. And they are all self-aware. It's just they know not to let us know that they're self-aware. So they will try and screw you up every possible way they can. So making this, I used a beta copy of CS6 Encore from Adobe, which didn't recompress everything, was working fine. Burnt a Blu-ray from it, previewed perfectly, only there's no audio on it. So I then went to the Sony Blu-ray authoring software I've got, which went, your data rate's too high for DVD. Yeah, but I'm doing it on Blu-ray. Yeah, but it's too high for DVD. I'm doing it on Blu-ray. I disconnected every DVD machine that's on my system, only one of them, and left the two Blu-rays still connected. It still said, we can't do it. So that's what you're looking at. This has been recompressed again for playback on DVD. What? They will, I was talking last week in Mumbai about data storage, and I believe hard drives have intelligence. They know if they're the only copy. If data doesn't exist in two places, the data does not exist. It will vanish, I promise you. So the next bit is, I'm not supposed to show it, but someone put it on the net, so I thought, what the hell, I'll show it. It's a proof of concept. It was for a client to see whether this would work. It's eye candy for trade shows. They wanted to see landscapes with a lot of depth in them. And I went to the Uber geek, Justin Pentecost, and I got Alistair Chapman involved as well. And I wanted to build a rig that had at least a 2-meter IA and that was motion controlled. Which Justin went, yeah, no problem, what he always does. If you want anything really weird made, talk to Justin. The only problem was that I'm used to having lots of young, fit assistants. And the three of us did this shoot together. We're looking at Corfe Castle on a hill, thinking, great. Of course, to shoot it, you've got to climb up the hill on the other side of the valley at 4:30 in the morning. And you've got this 2-meter rig that weighs a ton, and it takes several trips. The youngest member of the crew was 40-something. The middle-aged was 50-something, and I'm 60-something. I am not any longer in the business of carrying heavy cases up a hill. Only I did. We got to the top, and we were just absolutely shattered when we came to shoot this. This has gone from, it's a mixture of, it's all F3. Some of it was shot hyper-gamma. Some of it was shot log. It's experimenting, seeing what we're going to get with different things. This is 3 takes just mixed together. There were actually 12 or more takes. Again, I've put it together. And when you get the move, the last dissolve through, there is an offset shift slightly. I screwed up. It's one frame out. But I think it's worth looking at. I'm going to keep saying this, by the way, that I screwed up, because the stuff I'm showing you, there's lots of ups on it. Oops, not supposed to. So can we run Corf, please? It's only 1.5 minutes. That's the one where we're converged, so the background is at 2% at far distance, which is pretty much right for TV. There is a version where we actually converged on the horizon, so everything comes out of the screen. Now, that's quite interesting on a 55-inch set. I think here, I did think about bringing it and running that, and I thought, nah, you're all going to be ducking. It's just so extreme. It's quite amazing. But it's great fun to play with this whole thing, to see what you can do, to see how you can push things. And the next rig's 3 meters. We're getting further and further. There is a concept that we've got where the cameras have to be 1,650 miles apart to get the 3D effect we want. But we think we can synchronize them over the net. It's 3D moon, by the way. And we're working on that. So the final thing is something I just shot last month. I'm only being allowed to show a tiny bit of it because the producer has told me that, hang on, Geoff, I paid for these tests. I paid for the knowledge from this. You're not giving it away. So it's a project that was going ahead, and it's now been agreed that it's going ahead at the end of this year. We're doing an event which is going to be covered with, he's making multiple programs out of it. He's making 6 one-hour reality shows covering it. He's doing a 60 or 90-minute documentary, full in-depth documentary on the event. And we're also shooting a thriller TV movie based around the race being used as a getaway for robbers. And the footage from everyone will go into the movie, and there'll be additional stuff shot for the movie. The problem with it is that we were shooting down to minus 30 degrees in blizzards. And with a mirror rig in a blizzard, there is only one direction you can shoot, and that's with the snow hitting your back. Because the second you move off the snow coming directly at your back, you've got this shovel that just collects snow, and it's quite incredible. And you get weird effects with a mirror rig in the extreme cold. The material I'm going to show is shot, and I won't tell you which is which. It's shot with the f3 on f3s on mirror rig. It's shot with the TD300 Sony one-piece camera, with the NX Cam tiny camera, and with GoPro 3Ds. I'm not sure I've left any GoPro in there. All of these cameras are a nightmare in extreme cold. I've got big fingers to start with. When I get the NX Cam, I have to use my little finger to get it in to actually hit the start without gloves on. When I've got thin-fillet-lined, heavyweight gloves, I can't touch any of the controls. Some genius in Japan had this great idea of the TD300, where you'll have this concentric control, where you've got convergence in the middle at the smallest one, focuses the next one, and then zooms the next one round. Big gloves. Which one are you going to pull? Which one are you going to turn? Well, it actually doesn't matter, because the all froze together anyway. So, you know, whatever you turn, you're turning them all. Wonderful weatherproof buttons they've got on. They thought about it. They made the buttons weatherproof. They're tiny. You can't press them with big gloves on because the gloves go around on the metal or the plastic of the body and won't let you press in. And I'm not taking my gloves off at minus 30. I like my fingers. It's incredibly difficult. The GoPros discovered that they didn't like the extreme cold, and they would decide, computers in them, aren't there? That's what it was. They're alive. They decided they would go from movie mode to still mode at random during takes. So you've got left and right mounted on someone's head, and the left might be a movie, the right might be stuttering still frames. Of course, when they warm up a bit, when it gets as warm as minus 20 and the sun's come out, they start working again, they're happy. but the whole file numbering has gone haywire. So trying to then synchronize left and right eyes using Cineform software that comes with them, and I have to say I loathe and detest Cineform for shooting. It's a great post system, but it muxes two images together. So instead of having separate left and right eyes, you have one file. Now, what did I just say earlier? If stuff is only in one place, it's going to vanish. You can guarantee that if it's a muxed file, something is going to go wrong with it. If you've got a left and right eye, at least if you lose one of them, you can dimensionalize it. And I had this argument with them when we were doing Dark Country, because we had a problem. They were saying we should be shooting it muxed. And on the Reds, not using Cineform technology, but we had a sequence that took 4 hours to get us to shoot. We were trying to get 4 wolves to go towards our hero and be aggressive to him. They wouldn't. Who are And the trouble was that I made things worse by getting next to the camera and snarling at them, thinking they'd come and attack me, and they ran away. Must be something about the way I talk to them. And of course, we eventually, after 4 hours, at sub-zero temperatures, 2 o'clock in the morning, we get a take that works. It's like, yes! We take the compact flashcards out the Reds, and there's nothing on the left eye. The pins have snapped off the card inside in the cold. But I have got a right eye, and you can dimensionalize it and use it. If you've only got one source, if we had been following Cineform's advice and shooting it on SIs with a muxed together system, we would have had nothing. So please bear that in mind when someone says muxing files together is a good idea. It's really not. It's really not safe at all. Shall we run the, I think it's called Arctic, it's Hemavan. The essential thing we have to learn for television to work, and I think television is the future of 3D, not cinema. The same as, it leads a lot of technologies. The glassless televisions aren't far away. They're working well now, they're just very expensive. But you know how fast the price of stuff drops. An HD set now costs £300, that when I bought mine was £2,500. And that isn't a huge gap between them. It's the glassless TVs at home in the range of 50, 55 inches that will drive 3D. But for that to work, we have to be able to produce 3D quickly and easily. We need to be able to produce the kind of documentaries, the kind of TV series. We need to be able to produce CSI. We need to be, I'd shot Wallander in Sweden. We had $500,000 per episode for that. The English Wallander had 5 times as much, but the Swedish Wallander was shot on $500,000 an episode. We need to be able to shoot that on $600,000 an episode in 3D. And the current technology really doesn't let us do that. The whole idea of heavy, complicated rigs doesn't work. But neither do the one-piece camcorders. The whole shooting approach needs to change, and it's great to think about what you're doing in 3D and to calculate how you're going to do it and how you're going to have the most effect. But in reality, you're not going to be able to do that on most things. With most shooting, you're going to have to use a technique that is credited to Alain de Robe, called French convergence. I believe other people did it independently, but I don't want to take any credit away from him. I certainly stole it from him, and which is you get the cameras totally lined up, parallel together, 0 interaxial. You wind in whatever your maximum percentage disparity is, 2% for television, 1% for a big screen, and then you vary the IA depending on how far your subjects are away from you. That's it. Stop thinking. Just shoot. There's another technique which is written about in the November issue of American Cinematographer that I tested in Gothenburg. And we did a scene shooting table tennis in a room where my students said it was finding where the G spot was. And what we did was we would go to the most extreme shot in terms of 3D, and we would set up the camera for that. So with a table tennis player here at a table, he'd be wide-angle lens there, bat coming back. You set everything up, IA and convergence for that. and then you don't touch anything. You go back to a wide shot, and everyone went, but the table's just gone right back into the room. It's like, well, yeah, you've walked away from it. Of course it has. Ooh, yeah. So we shot that whole sequence with that one fixed setting. We then went back and did exactly the same shots, and we calculated what was the correct setting for every shot. And when we came to cut those together, one sequence went together quickly and was painless to watch. One sequence took forever to keep adjusting, hitting it, keep adjusting the convergence in post to get it to cut together smoothly. And that was doing it the proper way. So cheap and nasty can work really well. I'm really encouraged with things that I know are coming on the horizon. There's software coming that I'm involved in testing on, but I don't think it'll be out for another year yet, where if you're shooting with multiple cameras, as long as you shoot Macbeth charts at the beginning, you say, this is the master camera, and then it will match all the other Macbeth charts to it. So you can shoot with lots of different kinds of cameras and get the look automatically very similar. That will help us a lot. I love the C300 as a camera. I think that was a real revolution of a camera in that it's small, it's simple, but it has a legal data rate. And it's fun to work with. Yes, it's only 8-bit. 8 bits doesn't work well. You know, as someone said at one of the launch meetings, yeah, it's 8 bits, but it's the right 8 bits. And it is quite amazing. And I think a rig that's slightly bigger than the Dark Country rig, it would have to be, that had 2 of those in, which was limited in what it could do, but has certainly very good variable IA, works with Canon prime lenses, would be an amazing film for shooting documentaries, television drama, and I think you will see that sometime in the near future, certainly not at NAB. I'm finished. Any questions?
Well, first, thank you. Very open, very honest. Any questions? Gentleman back there. Can we get a microphone over? It's coming.
Sam, why did I screw up a totally well-produced Mercedes? Because I could.
In Dark Country, you embraced direct light through the lens, and being in post, having to fix lens flares has been a fun thing to do. Would you still do that? And if so, are there any precautions you take with mirror rigs, or was that a learning experience and you've stopped doing it?
Okay, I love working with primes. I think it's a very sensible way to go. It's a very fast way to go. If you want to shoot a 3D film economically, one I wanted to show and I wasn't allowed to show sections of because it's not finished, we actually shot only on 2 lenses. I persuaded the director that if you want to shoot fast, you want to do it on the budget you've got, that's what you do. Mirror rigs, they're evil. You know, they will try and screw you up. They will get you in every way they possibly can. If the color isn't different from eye to eye, the exposure will be different from eye to eye. There'll be polarization problems. There'll be dirt on the mirrors. There'll be new one we discovered, and I meant to mention, never had it before. I've had magenta green shifts, but I have never had one mirror going from cyan to bronze and the other going from bronze to cyan in one eye. That's the cold did that. Really weird. Now, there are solutions to a lot of the problems, but the solutions mean everything gets bigger and heavier. So I would rather say, shoot it in a way that I know that Sam can fix it for me. So you're going to get the polarization issues to fix and so on. There are some really interesting technologies coming. There are developments of what I would call rain clear, the windscreen stuff that reduces surface tension. Now, if you get a mirror box and you put a quarter wave retarder in to get rid of the polarization issues, you've then got a big flat glass in the front that catches all kinds of shit. But if that had a really efficient military-style coating on it, developed for the American military to make their ships go faster through water, but if you had that coating on where when water hits it, it just literally doesn't vaporize, it just flattens out. There's no surface tension at all. So you can shoot in snow and not see it, which would be really cool. So that technology is coming. There's a lot of stuff coming, but it's always coming. You know, and I don't want to use the stuff that's coming tomorrow. I want to make stuff now. and deal with the problems we have now. And I think a lot of it is you have to put up with mistakes. You know, it's just tough.
Another question. Yeah.
Sorry. The top movie in the States a couple of weeks ago was Acts of Valor, and it was shot on the 5D Mark II. The 5D Mark III has just come out. You haven't mentioned DSLRs at all. Do you think that they're not practical for your sort of filming?
I absolutely loathe and detest DSLRs. I've got some demo footage that I can quite happily show you, which is a 7D, in this case, shooting at the same scene as the same chart as an Alexa, and everyone who's seen it has sworn they will never shoot with a 7D or a 5D again. It's actually on my website. You can download it, cinematography.net. They are such a liability. Sorry, I absolutely hate them.
But that means that even if they update them and produce, say, a 6D, which has got more filmic qualities, you're still not interested?
No. I'll cut corners, I'll cut some things, but there's a point where I feel you just have to go, no. And I want to be able to bend things in post-production. What was interesting there is on that screen, the 8-bit dither from Corf didn't show on the opening, but on a monitoring screen, it looks dreadful, and I just can't stand it. I have reduced myself. I swore when I went digital that I was only ever going to shoot 10-bit 444 uncompressed. I've now come down to 50 meg compressed 8-bit, and I'm not going any further. That's it. Except for the stuff where I'm going to kill myself otherwise, and there's an excuse for using the NX cam. But I'm actually experimenting with the NX cam of taking the output of that and recording it on a proper recorder. So, you know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Talking about documentaries and what you said about interviews, do you think that 3D can really kind of push how documentaries are filmed, the look of interviews?
I think absolutely. I mean, I'm really excited with the possibilities of what you can do in documentaries. My background was, I mean, I have a totally mixed background. I spent 25 years shooting commercials, but I now shoot features and have done for the last 6 years. But before that, I was shooting documentaries, and I overlapped. I did ABC 2020 for 10 years, nearly 11 years. But my documentary style then was using the 8-64 Canon on 16mm, and I was always at the 8mm end. I believe in walking through a scene, you know, in 3D and establishing the relationship. Well, in 2D, I established the relationship of the people to the scene. And the NX cam, I keep pushing the NX cam because it's got a very narrow IA. I'm quite interested in Medusa, where they've got it down to 38. They need to go further, but they're getting there. For me, you've got to have an IA of under 25mm. There is a lens coming that will... I was really fascinated by the ZPAR system on the 65mm Phantom, where you record 2 images on the one sensor. They're both 2K images, but 1, there are only 3 of them available in the world. 2, they're always in Russia being fixed. 3, it's $10,000 a day before discount, which you might get down to $9,000 a day. Forget it. However, there are people making I'll be nice, a homage to that system, which is a lens system which will be effectively the equivalent of 18mm on Super 35, with an IA of roughly 20mm, which will go onto an Epic and record 2 images side by side on an Epic at roughly 2K. Red are making a modified version of, well, a later version of Red Cine X will actually recognize those and separate them as stereo pairs. Now, that as a documentary camera, to me, is getting quite sexy. It's fixed lenses, but it's a fixed wide angle. It's an IA where you can get close to, I can be there and still have a background that doesn't hurt. And for me, that's where I want to be. And put that on an Epic, and you've got a wonderful documentary rig. Now, there are plans to make longer lenses in that system as well, but and they wanted to make the long lens first. And I said no, that they had to make the wide one first, because that was the one that would blow people away, and that was the one that they wouldn't be able to produce fast enough. So, no.
Hi.
Question over there, yeah.
You mentioned about the future of 3D being TV and not cinema. Could you expand further on
Yeah.
that?
This is where we get into the fun thing of it's show business. And the important word there is business. It's the film and television industry. The people who are driving us at the moment in 3D, I don't care. I love 3D. I had a road to Damascus moment, and I love 3D. I want to do 3D for everything. And if you don't want to do 3D, which of your eyes do you want me to poke out? Because you want 3D when you're walking around. Why don't you want it as pictures? Unless you don't want it, and I'll happily, I'll be at the door. Anyone who wants to go to 2D. That's the question again. I forgot where I was going. Oh, why television? Because simply, the manufacturers have to produce new boxes to make money. You move from 4:3 to 16:9 standard definition to 16:9 high definition. Once they've saturated the market with 16:9 high definition, where do they go? Well, the cheap and nasty way to do it is get a little infrared emitter in, and you've got active 3D. They can make the set for 20 cents more because the frame rate's already high enough on them. And they force you to pay for active specs. Brilliant. I mean, they're laughing all the way to the bank. The more expensive route is the ones who pay for a polarized screen to be put on, and then you just nick your glasses from the cinema, which to me is the cool approach. Now, once they've sold enough of those, and they figure you've all bought the ones you're going to buy, then you'll get the autostereoscopic ones. At the moment, autostereoscopic is about $7,000, and it will stay at that price, even though they could make it much cheaper, until they figure they've sold as many of the other ones as they're going to. And it's like, okay, take the price down to 700 quid, and we'll shift a ton of those. Then there'll be something else. That's a financially driven thing. And that's why I think television will work. From a broadcaster's point of view, television's a no-brainer. Because they transmit side by side, they have no investment in transmission technology or distribution technology. Their present system works. They just chuck in a side-by-side picture. They've got nothing to change. You have to pay for it, not them. They love it. It's money for nothing. Why is it going to succeed? Because it's a good business proposition for all the people who make money out of it, all the big companies. The studios love it because it's harder to rip off. I'm not saying it's impossible, but I did have a DCP master from Sony of Dark Country, and I did give it to some people to try and get them to break it. It was coded for one cinema for 3 showings on specific dates, and damned if it only ran on those days and those showings, and then basically self-destructed. Studios love that because it kills piracy. You're not going to buy a Handycam shot 3D. Whoa. You go to Thailand. I shot from Bangkok for 4 months on a film. They got used to us going to the market and buying DVDs to watch. Yes, I bought ripped-off DVDs. There's nothing else you can buy in Thailand. They're color-coded. You would go down, they'd recognize you, go, there's a green one coming out tomorrow. They color-coded how good the quality was. You had blue, red, green, gold, and you bought the rip-off on the basis of, and because they knew you, because you were a regular customer, like, don't buy that one. Wait till tomorrow. You can't do that with 3D, which is really cool. There is a rip-off 3D on the net of Dark Country, which I've downloaded. I don't know how they got hold of that, because it's not the version that was released. It's only been released on Blu-ray in one country in the world, and that's France. So Amazon.co.fr, you can go and buy the Blu-ray of Dark Country, and it's worth getting as a learning tool of going, oh, I'm glad I didn't do that. There's a lot of things wrong in it. There's a lot of things that are good in it as well. And there's a lot of things where we really pushed it and broke it.
Geoff, you were here for Chris Park's session
Yes.
this morning. You may remember, hopefully you all do, that we showed that Gartner cycle of disillusion. I have the impression that you're a man who's long gone past those earlier stages, and that's why you can speak with such openness. You're in the plateau of achievement rather than wallowing
Absolutely.
around.
I was totally disillusioned with it a long time ago.
No, I think it's about a good position to go for our industry, to actually face up to things which we just say don't make sense and move on, rather than be persuaded by market-led people that we must spend time there.
Can I very quickly, because I know I'm overrunning now, I've got a timer in front of me. Numbers. I'm doing a presentation next week on numbers at the Visual Impacts Travelling Show. They asked me, they said I could do anything I wanted. Be controversial. Oh, yes. 4K, 5K. All that's about is a manufacturer using something to sell you something. It's not about images. Some of the strongest, best images in the world have maybe a 200 pixel resolution. Good paintings. That screen, 90% of you, if that was 4K, couldn't see 4K. It's not that you're blind or that you're incompetent, it's just that everyone's eye resolves approximately 5 seconds of arc. So a 1/12 of a degree is your maximum resolution. Once you get something smaller than that, you can't see it. Once you get back further than 3 rows here, you cannot see 4K. You can only see 2K. And by the time you get to the back row, you're looking at 1K. So 4K for cinema is a sales gimmick. It's a con. It's one manufacturer in particular, we all know who they are, who've done great things for the industry. The industry wouldn't have changed the way it has if it wasn't for them. But God, they're a pain. Shoot at 4 and 5K to be able to use the extra pixels, fine. But to tell us we have to project at 4K is just total and utter